Welcome to chemistry. Here we go. So I want you to review a previous lecture or a little bit of prior knowledge that we've discussed about before. And that prior knowledge is groups. Remember, groups are the vertical columns on the periodic table. So we're going to be tying in our groups and associated valence electrons. The valence electrons are the outermost electrons in an atom or an ion, mostly atom. Okay, and they are the largest principal quantum number, n, s, and p orbitals only. If you remember back to the s and the p-type orbitals. Okay, so we're going to look at the groups on the periodic table. So what I want you to do is I want you to highlight group number 1, or the alkali metals, and that's the first vertical column on the far left-hand side of the periodic table. So this is group 1. It starts with hydrogen at the top and ends with francium at the bottom. How many valence electrons in group 1? 1. Unbelievable. Okay, move one column, one group to the right of group 1, and you're going to have group number 2. And how many valence electrons in group number 2? 2 valence electrons. All right, fantastic. Now we're going to jump a little bit on the periodic table here, and we're going to go far to the, keep on moving past the transition elements and intertransition elements, and we're going to move over to group number 13. But none of the valence electrons are going to have greater than 10. In fact, all of the valence electrons are less than 8, in fact. So, if it says group number 13, it's 10 less than that, so that would be group 3, and that starts with boron, aluminum, gallium, indium. In that whole group is 3 valence electrons. The top of carbon there, and silicon, germanium, that entire group is group 4, and it has 4 valence electrons. And the top of group, the next group here, is with the nitrogen, and everything in the nitrogen group, the nitrogen column, vertical column, has 5 valence electrons. And oxygen, the number of valence electrons in the oxygen group are 6. And then remember the halogens from our group naming. That starts with the fluorine, the chlorine, the bromine, the iodine. Those are the halogens, and that is 7 valence electrons. And then the next group on the far right-hand side of the periodic table, except for helium. So we're going to cross out helium. That would have 8 valence electrons. Now you notice that I did miss a certain part of the periodic table. Okay, and I'm going to come back to that in just a second, but you should see that we have groups 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and those groups correspond to the number of valence electrons. That's the outermost electrons in those atoms. So the sections of which we missed here so far is the transition metals and the inner transition metals. Remember those groups that we discussed before in a previous lesson. So these two sections of the periodic table are shaped like a boot. No way. And how many boots do you typically wear? Well, you wear 2 boots. So that means that if you have an element within the transition or intertransition series, then you have 2 valence electrons. That is, 2 valence electrons for anything within the boot, because you wear 2 boots. So transition and intertransition elements have 2 valence electrons. Have a great day. See you next time.